We hear about Tzipi Livni that cancels her trips to England, to South Africa. We hear about Ariel Sharon that was indicted in Belgium for war crimes, for what happened in Lebanon. And recently, we hear about the efforts that 13 Palestinian families are doing in Spain to indict IDF soldiers for war crimes. They do it because of a famous bombing of terrorist named Saleh Shhadeh back then in Gaza in 2004. Saleh Shhadeh was a major terrorist in Gaza. He was number 2 in Hamas. He was responsible for the death of hundreds of Jews. He was the mastermind behind all the suicide bombings in the first years of the Intifada. Israel tried to assassinate him several times with no success. They were able to take down number 1, Sheikh Yassin, but they were not able to catch number 2. They tried. One day they even fired a missile on his car in Gaza, but they hit only the rear back of the car. Saleh Shhadeh got slightly injured and ran away. One day, Israel gets information that Saleh Shhadeh is sitting in a building in Gaza, 15 floors up. They didn't want to miss him this time. So they decided to drop a bomb that weighed a ton on the building. They called the Palestinians who were with him in the building to go out, but the Palestinians refused. They stayed with him in the building, and Israel, which saw that there is a tremendous risk for the life of the Israelis in Israel if they don't assassinate Saleh Shhadeh, dropped the bomb down. The building crashed. Saleh Shhadeh got killed, and other 13 Palestinians got killed as well. These families of the 13 Palestinians are going from tribunal to tribunal around the world that has extraterritorial jurisdiction and asked to indict the IDF soldiers that were involved with the Saleh Shhadeh bombing for war crimes. We were asked if there is anything we can do. And we thought that if we find a Spanish figure that was involved with war crimes as well, bring it to court in Spain, it might cool down the excitement of the Spanish court to go after the IDF soldiers. So we found out that the former Prime Minister of Spain, Javier Solana, was the head of the NATO forces in the Kosovo War. And during the Kosovo War, the NATO forces were so afraid to drop from a bomb from small altitude that they dropped it from very high altitude, which are not so accurate. And one of the bombs went by mistake and fell on a children's hospital, killed 7 children. This is a war crime. We immediately hired a Spanish lawyer. We got terror victims from Kosovo who agreed to serve as plaintiffs in this complaint, and we were working on preparing an indictment for war crimes against Javier Solana. Shortly after we started the proceeding, the lawyer in Spain called us up and told us that we should better hold off because Spain is thinking about changing the law. 2 weeks later, we got a phone call from the Spanish lawyer saying that Spain changed the law, that from now on, if you want to bring an indictment for war crimes in Spain, you yourself have to be a Spanish citizen, or the defendant has to have Spanish citizenship. Obviously, the claim against the IDF soldiers was dropped according to the change of the law. We don't know what role we played in this proceeding, but we know one thing, that the answer to lawfare, the defense against lawfare, is the best offense. This is only a portion of the cases we're handling in Israel, United States, Europe, and Canada. Every day, we get more and more calls from more and more terror victims who want to fight back, who are seeking justice, who more than anything else in the world don't want to be victims anymore. And we are dedicated to help them. We established Shurat HaDin, a non-profit organization, to take all these hundreds of cases and file them in orderly manner in the courts around the world. We're doing it because we can win the cases. We're doing it because we are winning the cases. We got over $1 billion in judgment so far. We put a lien on over $600 million, and we actually collected more than $120 million, which we forwarded to the terror victims. We're winning the cases. We scored a great victory in the Supreme Court of the United States in a case that was filed on behalf of two young orphans. The parents were driving their car in an area near Bet Shemesh. They came back from a wedding. They left the oldest baby with the parents who were babysitting him, and they took the youngest baby with them in the car. They were driving their car until they reached a stoplight, and they had to stop the car. The second they stopped the car, a Hamas gang that ambushed them shot them to death. The baby was sitting in his baby seat, was sitting lower than the line of the fire, and didn't get hurt. It took the IDF 3 hours to find the car, the dead parents, and the crying baby. We filed a lawsuit against the Palestinian Authority in the United States. The Palestinian Authority hired a lawyer. They hired Ramsey Clark to come to court, and he raised 3 objections. First, he said the Palestinian Authority is a state, and since we are a state, we have sovereign immunity. We cannot be sued in court. Second, the United States has no jurisdiction over the Palestinian Authority. And third, what the Hamas gang did to this young couple considered to be a legitimate act of war, and therefore no court should deal with this issue. It took the court in the United States 4 years to come down with a decision. And eventually, they gave us a judgment against the Palestinian Authority for $116 million. They took it to the courts of appeals, but the courts of appeal rejected their appeal. They took it to the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court rejected the writ. In the meantime, we got another judgment against the Palestinian Authority for almost $200 million. And we took this judgment, sent them to all the banks in the United States, saying that if you have money that belongs to the Palestinian Authority, turn it over to us. Many of them say that they don't have money that belongs to the Palestinian Authority. The few who did said that they are not sure that the money they are holding belongs to the Palestinian Authority because it was under different name, was under the Palestine Monetary Authority, Palestine Pension Fund, Palestine Investment Fund. We know, and we argue in court, that when Yasser Arafat wanted to hide his money, he did not open bank accounts on the name of the Palestine Authority. He followed the advice of the Israeli Council, which told him to open bank accounts on different names. And we are in litigation against these banks in court. But in the meantime, the money is frozen. And we're talking about $200 million that nobody can touch, including the Palestinian Authority. And that caused a great damage to the Palestinian Authority. We know it because for several times now, they approached the State Department. They wrote personal letters asking them to do anything they can, in their own words, anything the American Constitution can, anything the American law can in order to stop these cases. They told them that as a result of this restraining order and the result of these cases, they cannot open bank accounts, they cannot wire money around, they cannot pay rent, they cannot pay salaries, they cannot function in the United States. They told them that if these cases will continue, they won't have a choice but to close their branch in Washington. The State Department considered for a while to get involved with the cases. The moment we heard that, we launched an emergency campaign against the State Department. We got 10 senators and 10 congressmen, wrote letters to the State Department asking them to stay away from the cases. We brought 25 terror victims from Israel and the United States to personal meetings with the representative of the State Department, urging them not to intervene with the cases. We told them that these are private cases, civil lawsuits that they should not get involved with. We told them that for once, they have to stand on the rights of the terror victims, of the American citizens, and not to the rights of the terror organizations. We told them that if you don't have guts to fight the terror organizations, don't stop us from doing it. We got AJAC, OU, UJC, urged the members to call the White House and to ask them not to intervene with the cases. And finally, the State Department came to court, filed a notice, and said that for now, they are not going to intervene with the cases, and urged the Palestinian Authority to settle these cases out of court. For the first time, the Palestinian Authority's lawyer came to us and started talking about settling the cases out of court. We are winning these cases. We're doing it because it's time for the public to take a role in the war against terrorism. It's time for private attorneys, private citizens to fight the terror organizations. Governments cannot do what we do. Governments have political restraints. They have international treaties they are signed of. They have foreign relationships with different countries. They cannot fight and bring lawsuits against terror organizations and against terror regimes. We can, because we represent private people, and we take these cases until the end. We're fighting terrorism in court, and our goal is to bankrupt the terrorism one lawsuit at a time. We're doing it because we are sick and tired going with parents to the Abu Kabir Forensic Center and helping them identifying their children's bodies with dental records. We're sick and tired attending funerals and watching little children saying Kaddish on their parents, but even worse, watching parents saying Kaddish on their children. But mostly, we are sick and tired sitting in the military courts who are watching the defendants from the Hamas, who are looking at the judge's eyes, smiling at him and promising him that they will win. They will not win. We will win, because we are fighting for our national survival. The Torah taught us, "Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa." Don't stand idly by your brother's blood. We will not stand idly by our brother's blood. We cannot afford it. Israel cannot afford it. The Western world cannot afford it. You cannot afford it. Thank you very much.
Really.